Hi everyone, I am Brittany or Nerdy Little Collective, and today I am here with Taylor Simon, who is an author, activist, bookstore owner, all kinds of things. So, as we're getting started, Taylor, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and your books?
I do a lot of things in the community. I own a pop-up bookstore called Liberation is Lit. So I feel like I've been telling everybody that everything I do is centered around books. So I sell books, and then I'm also a writer. I write a lot of poetry, so I have three books of poetry that I've self-published. The first one is Phases, and that's just about my journey from unlearning hiding behind perfection and really leaning into vulnerability as my superpower. And then my second collection is called Love and Other Forms of Heartbreak. And that one was supposed to be all my love poems. And then I had one of my really good friends pass away. So it became a lot about grief and loss as well as as measurements of how much you've loved somebody. And then my newest poetry collection is called Black Madonna. It came out last year. And I like to say that's all my Black liberation poems. So just all of the poems that I've written so far around liberation and justice and just celebrating joy in life. So those are my poetry books.
Okay, that's great. You kind of touched on this a bit with that answer, but how does your own identity play into the writing of your books, like your poetry, things like that?
Very much so. I definitely write from the personal experience and even when I started, so Liberation is Lit, my pop-up bookstore started as a blog around books back in 2019. And it was very personal about not just what I liked about books, what I didn't like about books, but also thinking about how this book made me feel about different issues. And it was kind of like a building archive of just what was going on in the world and how I felt activated by these different stories to make the world a better place. So all of my writing is deeply personal. I know for my first poetry collection, I dug through all my journals and turned some of my journal entries into poetry. And yeah, I definitely write centering Black women specifically, queer Black women specifically, because that those are some of my strongest identities. And even when I'm talking about liberation, it's about centering my most marginalized identities, which Black, queer, woman, and seeing that perspective as how when the most marginalized of us get free, we all get free. So, my work is definitely hinged on a lot of my different identities, because it is so personal.
Poetry in general, I feel like is a very personal kind of genre. And kind of speaking on that, what draws you in about poetry as a genre in general?
Yeah, so I joke with people and my attention span is just long enough for poetry and poems. Um, I'm currently trying to write, not trying, I am writing a book that's longer prose, and it is taking everything in me to stay focused to write an entire book that's not just like, oh, a collection of poems where I just arrange the poems in an order that makes sense. I actually have to write from start to finish. But also I feel like poetry is just very potent. It's you can pack a lot in such few lines and stanzas. And a lot of my poems are also short. Like my longer poems are probably 12 lines or so. So I'm definitely a short form writer for sure. And then I really love essay writing as well for my longer form content. Um, but I just love how with poetry specifically, you can say so much in so little words. And I find comfort in the not restriction, but kind of like being confined with so little words to say so much. I find it really comforting. So definitely, and then the flexibility of poetry being more about how it makes you feel versus like a whole novel with different constructions and motifs and chapters and all of the things. Um, I like I do really like the potency of poetry.
Do you have any authors that you have kind of inspired the way you write poetry, or how, how have you gained your own style?
Yeah, so as far as my short poems, I definitely started writing shorter poems after I read Rupi Kaur, and people have a lot of opinions about her being a social media poet. But that was my first poetry experience that really made me feel something with like so little words. So I definitely draw inspiration from her. As far as subject matter, really love Audre Lorde's poetry. She's probably one of my favorite poets. For contemporary poets, I really like oh, what is her name? Oh, Kendra Allen is one of my favorites. She writes really personal and she's from the South, so it has that Southern writing. Destiny Hemphill is another poet who writes a lot about motherhood. And I'm not a mom, but I'm a Cancer son, so I connect in that way. Um, so there's a lot of poets out there that I just Jasmine Mans is another one I gain inspiration from. KB Brookins. So lots of lots of Southern Black poets is kind of what I gravitate to the most, especially in this time of my life.
I also am a Cancer sign, so I get it. Those water signs really hit the emotions sometimes.
Yes, yes.
Uh, so your website mentions that you speak on lots of different topics like book banning, storytelling activism, racial justice, feminism. How do these topics influence your day to day as well as your own storytelling?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, my bookstore started out as a blog and I was reading different stories, whether they were fiction or memoir or essay collections, and it became less about the book itself and more about how I would pick up those threads around feminism, racial justice, Black liberation, and how that story in particular um, kind of changed me as a person. And so I do, as a bookstore owner, I do a lot of book recommendations. But also my bookstore, it's technically a for-profit business, but I do a lot of kind of nonprofit type things, except for political advocacy, because I know 501(c)(3)s can't do a lot of like lobbying and political advocacy. So that was why I decided to keep Liberation is Lit as a for-profit business. But I'm always at the State House here in South Carolina. On different things like this legislative session alone, we've had issues around abortion, we've had issues around um education, public education, book censorship has been a hot button issue. and all of those things. And the books that are commonly being censored are the ones by marginalized authors, especially Black and LGBTQ plus authors. So I'm always advocating for the right for those books to stay in schools and for students to have access to them. But also my other advocacy, I'm also using books as a way for people to educate themselves about different issues. So when I do calls to action on my social media, I always include book recommendations for people to read further. Um, but even just going to the State House and sitting in the State House, that's where I wrote like half of Black Madonna, just my feelings sitting in these different meetings and doing these different political advocacy activations, and it has changed my work fundamentally. Um, while it's still deeply personal to me, it's a more of how can I use my experience as a Black, a queer, and as a woman to point to shed light on different issues and to again promote the idea that when the most marginalized of us gets free, we all get free. So that's definitely how it's affected my storytelling.
I agree. When the marginalized of us gets free, all of us are free. But until then, we all have work to do. We're all interconnected. And I've spoken a little bit about how on my threads about the LGBTQIA plus community would not be where we are today without Black trans women leading
Hmm.
leading the way. So I agree definitely with that sentiment. Uh, Now, speaking of your bookstore, Liberation is Lit, have you always dreamed of owning a bookstore, or did it just kind of happen?
It kind of just happened. If you would have told me like 5 years ago that I would be a capitalist entrepreneur, I'm not capitalist, but an entrepreneur, I would have been like, no, absolutely not. Like, profit is icky. I'm just here for the people. I can't run a business. I know nothing about owning a business or doing business. Um, but it just felt like a natural progression on where my book blog was heading, and the timing just coincided with one of the worst mental health periods of my life, working at a job that was supposed to be this utopia place for me to work, and it was not very good for my mental health. And so I applied to other jobs, nobody will hire me. And so I was like, well, let me like try this bookstore thing out and see what happened. So I filed for my LLC, I got my website up and going, and I put out a call on my social media, was like, hey, I'm starting a bookstore. Anybody who has used books they want to donate to me, just let me know. I'm taking donations. And then just from there, it's just grown so much. And I've gotten so many partnerships with different individuals in the community who help support. And I would not be coming up on Liberation is Lit's third birthday without community support, and believing in what I was doing, even when there was times where I couldn't even see the future of this thing happening. But I get people all the time say, like, I hope you know you're doing good work. Please keep doing it. And there's been times where I'm just like, this is just too hard. I just want to give up and just get a job and write my books. And everybody's like, this is so needed. You're like, the work is so needed. And that's what keeps me going. And um, I'm so glad I made the decision to birth this baby.
Well, happy third birthday, or coming up on third birthday. That is
Thank you.
quite the achievement that you have there, especially with everything else that you're doing.
Yes.
Uh, as an author, bookstore owner, and activist, what would you say your main goals are and why?
So I mean, as far as like my values just as a person and how it shows up in the work that I do, I truly just want to build a world of care. So in my, is that in phases? Yes. In my first poetry book, I wrote a poem about how instead of me thinking I was too sensitive for the world, I meant to change the world to create a new world in my image. Not in like this ego type situation, but my image as in um, where all of us value empathy and connection and community and um, being is taking care of each other in this radical and fundamental way that would change everything for humanity. And I know I'm not arrogant enough to think that I can do this alone, but in me modeling the world I want to live in, that is a way to get other people excited about the possibility of a better world. So that's what really excites me, and just thinking about um, how can we take care of each other in ways that we didn't feel the responsibility to take care of each other. Um, There's a lot going on politically in the world, and I spend a lot of time in South Carolina, no less, in the state house, fighting awful bills. But I do truly feel like if we just take the time to live live the world that we want to build, then that is a way we're going to build the world. So, and I do that through my poetry. I do that through storytelling, whether it's through my writing, my blog, or the stories that I tell during giving public testimony at the State House, or trying to rally people to speak up and use their voices on social media. I just think it's important for us to just embody the world first. And that's how we're going to slowly see change over time.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that you were in the process of writing a longer form prose book. Are you working on anything else as well that's new or
That has got me busy for right now. I am putting together a couple of chapbooks that I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with it. And then I've been sitting on a couple of novel ideas. I really want to write this horror novel. Kind of inspired by my grandmother, where we used to joke that anytime she would say something bad, we'd be like, oh gosh, now it's going to come true. So this idea of being cursed with speaking what you want into existence, I'm dabbling with that as a horror novel idea. So between that and my weekly Substack, and I write for a couple other online publications. And then I have a couple of book coaching clients. Yeah, I cannot start another project. But again, it's that I haven't officially been diagnosed with ADHD, but I feel like I got a touch of something because I'm just like, how do you stay on topic with one project to see it through completion before starting the next? And again, that's why I love poetry, because I'm always starting a new poem. I'm always revising something old. It's always something to keep me fresh. But with this book, it's a little bit harder for me to stay focused, but I'm excited for. I've been working with my friend who's an editor, and she's been keeping me on track to stop saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna write it next summer. I'm gonna write." No, I'm writing it now.
I understand the difficulties of staying focused on tasks. The abandoned art project is it's heavy, so I get
Yes.
it. Uh, can you tell me a bit about some of your other hobbies that you enjoy?
Yeah, so I'm trying to get back into running again. I used to love running before the pandemic. I ran my first 15K. And I walk ran a half marathon before, so I'm trying to get back into running. I also really like collaging. The title of artist to me, I still have a little imposter syndrome around it, but I've been like making um both like the traditional collages but also digital collages. And I've been really enjoying just making good art and really bad art. And then I also getting into video games. Me and my sister used to play all together all the time, and she would do the hard parts. And mind you, it's my little sister. She would do the hard parts, like beating all the boss battles and stuff like that. But I'm trying to become a gamer myself, so I'm going through and playing our old games and seeing how far I can get by myself. But I also love a good Animal Crossing too. So, yeah, those are really my hobbies. I'm probably going to play some video games after this conversation.
Right. That sounds like a good little afternoon.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you want to add?
Um, I can't think of anything, but I just want to give you your flowers for one, letting me take up space on your platform like this, but also providing a platform for writers and authors to talk about their work and share their passion. I really appreciate you for what you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for joining the conversation. I love talking with indie authors and being able to uplift authors that often get sadly pushed to the sidelines, and especially in the publishing world. I just like providing a space for that.